Ambassador Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars blur past as they traveled through hyperspace. The diplomatic vessel carried the hopes of humanity as it returned from another failed negotiation with the Galactic Council. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and thought about how different things had become since first contact 20 years ago. The communication panel suddenly blazed with emergency signals. Jake rushed to his station as the ship's AI announced an incoming priority transmission from the Council chambers on Nexus Prime. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the imposing figure of Council Speaker Zeth Kara, a 12-foot tall being made of living crystal that reflected light in impossible colors. Ambassador Morrison of the human species. The alien's voice resonated through the bridge like broken glass. The Galactic Council has reached a final decision regarding your people's aggressive expansion throughout known space. Jake felt his stomach drop. The formal tone meant trouble. Behind Zeth Kara, he could see the other council members arranged in their circular chamber, representatives of 12 alien civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Each species more advanced than humanity, each viewing humans as dangerous upstarts who needed to be controlled. Speaker Zeth Kara, I hope we can discuss whatever concerns the council may have, Jake replied, keeping his voice steady despite the fear building in his chest. The crystal being's faceted head tilted slightly. There will be no discussion. In the past 50 standard years, your species has colonized 17 star systems. Your military grows stronger each day. Your technology advances at a rate that disturbs the natural order of galactic civilization. This cannot continue. The hologram expanded to show a detailed map of human space. Red markers appeared around each colony world, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. Jake realized with growing horror that the council had been watching every human move, cataloging every ship, every settlement, every defensive position. The council hereby demands the immediate surrender of all human military assets. Zeth Kara continued, your outer colonies must be abandoned within one solar cycle. All humans will return to your birth system and accept permanent quarantine within the Sol boundary. You will develop no new technologies without council approval. You will build no new ships. You will expand no further into the galaxy. Jake's hands clenched into fists. Speaker, surely we can reach some compromise. Humanity has followed all established protocols for expansion. We have threatened no one. Our colonies are peaceful settlements focused on research and resource gathering. Your protests are irrelevant, the alien replied coldly. The decision is final. However, the council is not without mercy. If humanity complies with these demands, your species will be allowed to exist under council protection. Your people may live out their natural lives in safety. And if we refuse? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. The chamber behind Zeth Kara dimmed as the other council members leaned forward in their seats. If humanity refuses to accept its place in the galactic order, we will have no choice but to ensure the survival of civilized space. Quantum charges have been positioned around your sun, Ambassador. These devices will trigger a controlled stellar event that will sterilize your entire system while leaving the star intact for future use. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. A controlled nova would kill every living thing in the Sol system within hours. Earth, Mars, the orbital stations, the asteroid mining facilities, all of it would be reduced to cosmic dust while the sun itself remained to power whatever species the council chose to replace humanity. You have 72 standard hours to comply, Zeth Kara announced. Surrender your military, abandon your colonies, and accept quarantine or face extinction. Choose wisely, Ambassador Morrison. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at empty space. Around him, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. Captain Lisa Murphy, the Liberty's commanding officer, was the first to speak. Sir, we need to get this information to Earth immediately, she said. The faster we can reach hyperspace relay, Station 7, the sooner President Carter can begin preparing whatever response humanity chooses to make. Jake nodded slowly. Set course for the relay station, maximum speed, and Captain, put the ship on full alert. If the Council is willing to threaten genocide, they might decide to eliminate the messenger before we can deliver the warning. Liberty changed course, its engines straining to reach maximum velocity. In the depths of space, the ship raced toward home, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the council chamber on Nexus Prime fell silent as the alien representatives contemplated what they believed would be humanity's inevitable surrender. But the council had made a critical error in their calculations. They assumed that humans would respond like every other species they had threatened over the millennia. They expected fear, panic, and quick submission to superior force. They had no understanding of the human concept of spite, or the lengths to which humans would go when backed into a corner. In the Sol system, President Lisa Carter was reviewing agricultural reports when her secure communication terminal exploded, with priority alerts. Within minutes, she was surrounded by her top advisors in the Situation Room deep beneath the United Nations building in New Geneva. Admiral Kevin Brooks, head of Earth Fleet, studied the tactical displays showing human military positions throughout colonized space. Madam President, our forces are strong, but we cannot match the combined fleets of 12 alien civilizations. The Council has over 8,000 heavy warships compared to our 400. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, director of the Theoretical Physics Division, cleared her throat. Mr. Admiral, there are factors the Council may not be aware of. Project Prometheus has been developing certain capabilities that might change the tactical situation considerably. President Carter turned to the scientist. Doctor, are you saying we have options beyond surrender or annihilation? I'm saying, Madam President, that the Council's intelligence about human capabilities may be 20 years out of date. There are things we've discovered, things we've built, things we've learned that no alien government knows about. The question is whether we're prepared to reveal those capabilities and accept the consequences of doing so. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Humanity stood at a crossroads. They could submit to alien domination and live as prisoners in their own system, or they could roll the dice on secret technologies and risk everything in a war that would determine the future of human civilization. President Carter looked around, the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. Each one showed the same expression of grim determination. The Council had offered them a choice between slavery and death, never imagining that humans might choose to fight for something better than either option. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden within the hollowed-out remains of what had once been a mining station, Director Sam Hughes watched his team's work on humanity's greatest secret. The Project Prometheus facility stretched for miles through the rock, its corridors bustling with scientists and engineers who had spent decades perfecting technologies that the Galactic Council believed impossible. Sam pressed his hand against the reinforced viewing window of Laboratory 7, watching Chief Engineer Kate Williams make final adjustments to the prototype that would either save humanity or doom them all. The device hummed with barely contained energy, its sleek black surface seeming to bend light around itself. Status. Report, Kate, Sam said through the intercom. Kate looked up from her work, her face streaked with exhaustion but her eyes bright with excitement. The Nemesis drive is ready for field testing, Director. After 20 years of reverse engineering, we finally understand how the architect technology manipulates space and time itself. Sam nodded, remembering the day that had changed everything. The discovery of the derelict ship on the edge of the system had been classified above top secret from the moment the survey team reported finding intact alien technology, unlike anything the Council races possessed. The ship belonged to a species, called the Architects, beings the Council claimed had ascended to a higher plane of existence millions of years ago. The truth was far darker. Hidden in the ship's data cores, human scientists had found evidence that the Architects were the latest victims of the Council's systematic elimination of any species that refused to submit to their authority. The Architects had developed technology that made them independent of Council control, so they had been exterminated to preserve the galactic order. Director Hughes to Command Center. Sam spoke into his communicator. Initiate Phase 2 of Operation Checkmate. I want all stealth assets in position within 12 hours. Across the facility, Captain Ryan Foster received the activation signal in his command center aboard the UES Ghost Runner. The ship existed on no official records, built using architect metallurgy that made it nearly invisible to standard sensors. Around him, his crew prepared for a mission they had trained for, but never expected to actually execute. All units. This is Phantom Leader, Ryan announced over the encrypted communication network. Operation Checkmate is now active. Move to assigned positions and await further orders. Remember, the survival of our species depends on maintaining operational security until the moment we strike. 37 stealth ships acknowledged the transmission before vanishing into the depths of space. Each vessel carried weapons systems, based on architect technology, capable of effects that would seem like magic to the Council races. Over the past 5 years, these ships had been slowly positioning themselves throughout Council space, their crews living double lives as merchants, explorers, and diplomats while secretly preparing for war. Back on Earth, President Carter stood in the secured briefing room as Dr. Rodriguez explained the full scope of humanity's hidden capabilities. The physicist activated a holographic display showing the technical specifications of weapons and defenses that had been developed in absolute secrecy. The Nemesis drive creates localized gravitational anomalies, Dr. Rodriguez explained. It can generate artificial black holes, manipulate the flow of time within small areas, or create spatial distortions that make conventional weapons useless. The architects built this technology to defend themselves against superior numbers. Admiral Brooks studied the tactical implications. How many of these devices do we have operational? The primary array is installed in the Project Prometheus facility, Sam Hughes replied via secure transmission. We also have 12 smaller units distributed across our defensive positions. It's not enough to equip our entire fleet, but it should be sufficient to level the playing field. President Carter turned to her intelligence chief, Director Robert Kim. What do we know about Council military capabilities? Are there weaknesses we can exploit? Kim activated another display showing detailed analysis of Council fleet movements and tactical doctrines. Their strength lies in overwhelming numbers and superior firepower, but they've grown complacent after millennia of facing technologically inferior opponents. They rely heavily on standardized tactics and predictable formation fighting. Most importantly, they have no experience facing an enemy that can manipulate space-time. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from Ambassador Morrison aboard the Liberty. The diplomatic vessel had reached the hyperspace relay and transmitted the Council's ultimatum to Earth. The 72-hour countdown had begun. Madam President, Morrison's voice crackled through the subspace communicator. I've never seen the Council so unified in their determination to eliminate what they perceive as a threat. They genuinely believe that humanity will choose survival over resistance. President Carter smiled grimly. Then they don't understand humans very well, do they, Ambassador? Director Hughes, how quickly can you have the Nemesis array fully operational? 6 hours, Madam President. We've been conducting final systems checks while waiting for authorization. The moment you give the word, we can begin defensive operations. And our stealth fleet? Captain Foster's voice came through the communication network from his position near the Council's military headquarters. All units are in position and ready to execute their missions. The Council has no idea we're here. President Carter looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Each person understood the magnitude of the decision they were about to make. They could comply with the Council's demands and live as prisoners, or they could reveal humanity's true capabilities and fight for their freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, the President said, the Council has given us 72 hours to surrender our independence. Instead, I propose we use those 72 hours to show them exactly what happens when you threaten the human species with extinction. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up the final display, showing the positions of Council forces throughout the galaxy. The architects left us more than just technology, Madam President. They left us a warning about what happens to species that submit to the Council's authority. Every race that has ever accepted quarantine has eventually been eliminated when their usefulness ended. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Council's offer of survival was a lie. Whether humanity surrendered or fought, the aliens intended to eventually wipe them out. The only difference was whether humans would die on their knees or standing up. Then we make our choice here and now, President Carter declared. Signal, all units. Operation Checkmate is authorized. We show the Council that humanity will not go quietly into extinction. We show them that they picked the wrong species to threaten. Throughout human space, The message spread to every military unit, every research facility, every colony that had received the Council's ultimatum. The response was unanimous. Humanity would fight. The 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness aboard the UES Liberty, as Ambassador Jake Morrison prepared for what might be his final diplomatic mission. The Council had summoned him to Nexus Prime to receive humanity's official response to their ultimatum. Jake knew that his words would either save his species or condemn them to war against impossible odds. In the Great Council Chamber, representatives of 12 alien civilizations waited in their elevated seats. Speaker Zethkara's crystalline form reflected the chamber's lights as Jake walked to the center of the circular room. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft sounds of alien breathing and the hum of translation devices. Ambassador Morrison, Zethkara's voice echoed. Through the chamber, the appointed time has expired. What is humanity's response to the Council's generous offer of continued existence? Jake straightened his shoulders and activated his portable holographic projector. Speaker Zethkara, honored Council members, humanity has indeed reached a decision. But before I deliver our response, I have some information that the Council should consider. The hologram displayed records recovered from the architect derelict, showing detailed documentation of the Council's systematic elimination of advanced species throughout galactic history. Gasps and angry chittering erupted from several Council members as they recognized classified information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. These records show that the architects were not the first species to be eliminated for refusing Council authority, Jake continued. The Vanguard Empire, the Crystal Mines of Andromeda, the Hive Queens of the Spiral Arm, 17 different civilizations destroyed not because they were aggressive, but because they achieved independence from Council control. Council member Thexmora of the reptilian hegemony rose from her seat, her scales flashing with agitation. How did primitives like humans gain access to sealed historical records? This information was classified at the highest levels. The same way we learned to build weapon systems that your intelligence services believe impossible, Jake replied calmly. The architects left us more than just wreckage, Council members. They left us a warning about what happens to species that trust the Council's promises of protection. Speaker Zethkara's crystal form darkened with anger. Enough of these fabrications. Deliver humanity's response to our ultimatum, Ambassador. Jake smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, he felt genuinely confident. Very well, Speaker. Humanity's response to your ultimatum is simple. We refuse. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not disarm our military. And we will not accept imprisonment in our birth system. If you want to destroy the human species, you'll have to try. The chamber erupted in alien voices expressing shock, outrage, and disbelief. Several Council members demanded immediate military action, while others called for Jake's arrest as a war criminal. Through the chaos, Zethkara's voice cut like a blade. So be it. The human species has chosen extinction over wisdom. General Vax Thule, execute the Nova Protocol immediately. The massive alien general of the hegemony military forces activated his command console, sending the signal that should have triggered the quantum charges positioned around Earth's sun. Status indicators showed green across the board, confirming that the charges had received the detonation command. But nothing happened. General Vax Thule's confusion was visible as he checked and rechecked his systems. The charges were in position, they had power, they had received the command, but they remained inert. Across the chamber, technicians began reporting system failures and communication blackouts with the devices that should have already turned Earth into a lifeless cinder. It seems your charges have malfunctioned, General, Jake observed with false sympathy. Perhaps you should have your technical staff check for human infiltration teams equipped with phase-shifting technology. The color drained from Vax Thule's scaled face as the implications hit him. Human agents had somehow reached and disabled the Nova charges using technology that should not exist. The Council's ultimate weapon had been neutralized before it could be used. Impossible, Zethkara snarled. Human technology is centuries behind ours. You cannot have developed such capabilities. We didn't develop them, Jake replied. We inherited them from the last species you tried to eliminate. The architects made sure their legacy would survive to challenge your tyranny. General Vax Thule slammed his fist on his console. Speaker, I request immediate authorization for full military deployment. We will crush these upstart humans with conventional force and make an example that will terrify any other species considering rebellion. Granted, Zethkar replied without hesitation. Deploy the full battle fleet. 8,000 ships should be more than sufficient to eliminate human resistance and occupy their systems. Jake nodded politely. I'll be sure to pass along your intentions to my government. I'm certain they'll be very interested to learn about your battle plans. As alarms began sounding throughout the council complex, Jake was escorted to a holding cell to await the results of the coming battle. But instead of fear, he felt a sense of anticipation. The council had just made the same mistake that had cost them the Architect War, the mistake of underestimating their enemy's true capabilities. In deep space, the massive council fleet assembled for what its commanders expected to be a simple extermination mission. 8,000 warships representing the combined military might of 12 alien civilizations formed into attack formations and prepared to jump to human space. Admiral Korath of the Aquatic Depths commanded the fleet from his flagship, confident that no primitive species could stand against such overwhelming force. The fleet engaged their hyperspace drives and vanished from normal space, leaving behind only the distorted light of their passage. The journey to Earth would take 6 hours, giving the humans just enough time to contemplate their approaching doom. But as the Council Armada traveled through the dimensional tunnel of hyperspace, they had no idea that 37 human stealth ships were already positioning themselves for ambush. Captain Ryan Foster watched the alien fleet's progress from his command center aboard the Ghost Runner, timing his strike for maximum psychological impact. All units, this is Phantom Leader, Ryan transmitted on the encrypted frequency. Enemy, fleet is committed to hyperspace transit. Execute revelation protocol in 5 minutes. Show them what humans do to bullies who threaten our families. The stealth ships moved into attack position, their architect technology making them invisible to council sensors until the moment they chose to strike. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the council was about to learn that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. In the Project Prometheus facility, Director Sam Hughes watched the tactical displays as the enemy fleet approached human space. Dr. Rodriguez stood beside him, her hand hovering over the activation controls for the Nemesis array. "Sir," she said quietly, "are you ready to change the balance of power in the galaxy forever?" Sam Hughes smiled grimly. "Doctor, I've been ready for this moment since the day we found that architect ship. It's time to show the Council what happens when you threaten humanity with extinction." The Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their 8,000 warships spreading into attack formation like a metallic tide of death. Admiral Korath studied the tactical displays from his flagship bridge, noting the positions of human defensive platforms and the small fleet of 400 ships that had assembled to meet them. "Pathetic," the aquatic commander gurgled through his breathing apparatus. "These humans actually believe they can stand against the combined might of the Council. Signal all units to begin the attack. I want this resistance crushed within the hour." But as the alien fleet moved toward Earth, something impossible began to happen. The empty space behind the Council formation suddenly filled with human warships as 37 stealth vessels dropped their cloaking fields and opened fire with weapons that defied every known law of physics. Captain Ryan Foster watched from the bridge of the Ghost Runner as his opening salvo tore through the rear guard of the alien fleet. Beams of twisted space-time struck Council ships, causing their hulls to age centuries in seconds or trapping them in temporal loops that froze them in place. The architect weapons turned the Council's technological superiority into meaningless numbers on a display screen. "All units focus fire on command vessels," Ryan ordered. "Let's decapitate their leadership before they can organize a proper response." The human stealth ships moved through the alien formation like ghosts, their advanced metallurgy making them nearly immune to Council weapons, while their space-time manipulation devices carved through enemy shields as if they didn't exist. In the first 10 minutes of combat, the Council lost over 300 ships without destroying a single human vessel. Admiral Korath watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy he couldn't even target effectively. "How are they moving like that?" he demanded of his sensor officer. "Their ships are violating the fundamental laws of physics." "Sir, they appear to be manipulating local gravity wells and temporal fields," the officer replied, his voice shaking with disbelief. "The technology required for such effects should be impossible to miniaturize." On the Project Prometheus facility, Director Sam Hughes gave Dr. Rodriguez the signal she had been waiting for. The scientist's fingers danced across the control panel as she activated the Nemesis array, humanity's ultimate defensive weapon. Space around the Earth suddenly twisted into impossible shapes as artificial gravity wells began forming throughout the Sol system. Council ships found themselves trapped in pockets of altered spacetime, their engines useless against forces that could bend reality itself. Entire squadrons of alien warships were caught in gravitational anomalies that compressed them into metallic spheres or stretched them across light years of distance. "This is impossible!" Admiral Korath gasped as he watched his mighty fleet being destroyed by phenomena that violated everything he understood about the universe. "Signal the council chambers immediately. Tell them the humans have weapons beyond our comprehension." But the communication was intercepted by human intelligence operatives who had been waiting for this moment. Captain Sarah Wells led a team of specialists equipped with architect phase-shifting technology, allowing them to move through solid matter like ghosts. They materialized inside the Council's central archives on Nexus Prime, while the alien leaders were focused on the battle at Earth. "Sarah to all teams," she whispered into her communicator as her squad moved through the secured facility. "We have access to the master database. Beginning information extraction now." The human infiltrators copied terabytes of classified council records documenting millennia of systematic oppression, genocide, and technological suppression. Most damaging were the files showing how the council deliberately kept member species at specific development levels, providing just enough advancement to maintain dependence while preventing any real progress toward independence. Within hours, these revelations were being broadcast across the galaxy. On every communication frequency, species after species learned that their beloved council protectors were actually prison wardens who eliminated any civilization that grew too advanced to control. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On Nexus Prime, riots broke out as member species turned against their council representatives. Across the galaxy, colonial governments began declaring independence while local military forces switched sides or simply abandoned their posts. President Carter addressed the chaos from the Emergency Command Center beneath New Geneva. "Citizens of the galaxy," she announced on the same frequencies being used to spread the truth about council oppression. "Earth offers protection to any species seeking freedom from tyranny. Humanity will not stand by while the council continues its reign of terror." The offer struck a chord with dozens of civilizations that had lived under council control for centuries. The bat-like Chiroptera of the Outer Rim were the first to formally request human protection, followed quickly by the plant-based collective consciousness of the Garden Worlds and the silicon-based miners of the Asteroid Confederacy. Back in the Sol system, the battle had turned into a complete rout. Admiral Korath's once mighty fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing toward the edge of the system. The human defenders had not lost a single ship while destroying or capturing over 6,000 alien vessels. "Admiral," his communications officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different species fleets. Their crews are refusing to fight humans on behalf of the Council." Korath stared at the ITSAT tactical display showing the complete collapse of his forces. "Signal general retreat to all remaining units. We return to Nexus Prime immediately." But Captain Foster had other plans. "All stealth units, this is Phantom Leader. Do not allow the enemy fleet to escape intact. We want survivors to carry news of this defeat back to Council space. But make sure they understand the cost of threatening humanity." The Ghost Runner and her sister ships pursued the fleeing Council forces, picking off stragglers and disabled vessels while allowing enough survivors to escape and spread word of humanity's incredible victory. By the time the last alien ship jumped to hyperspace, the Council's military supremacy had been shattered forever. In the holding cell on Nexus, Prime Ambassador Jake Morrison watched through the small window as fires burned across the capital city. Council security forces battled with protesters from a dozen different species, while government buildings were stormed by angry mobs demanding answers about the revelations. Speaker Zeth Kara appeared at his cell door, the crystal being's normally perfect surface now cracked and dim with defeat. Ambassador, your species has destroyed the order that has maintained peace in this galaxy for millennia. Do you understand what you have unleashed? Jake stood and faced his captor calmly. We've unleashed something you tried very hard to suppress, Speaker. We've unleashed hope. Every species in this galaxy now knows that the Council can be defeated, that freedom is possible, and that humanity is willing to help them achieve it. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the detention facility, as human rescue teams, having teleported through the walls using architect technology, came to retrieve their ambassador. Zethkara stepped aside without resistance, the fight gone out of him as his civilization's greatest fear came true. The Council's reign is over, Jake observed as he was escorted toward freedom. The only question now is whether your species will join the new galactic order or cling to the wreckage of the old one. Outside, the city burned as the age of Council dominance came to an end. Across the galaxy, humanity was keeping its promise to protect those seeking freedom, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. 6 months after the failed Council ultimatum, Ambassador Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching construction crews from 40 different species work together to rebuild what had once been Nexus Prime. The massive space station now served as headquarters for the Terran Coalition, a voluntary alliance that had grown from humanity's promise to protect those seeking freedom. The transformation had been remarkable. Where once the Council's rigid hierarchy had enforced conformity and stagnation, now the galaxy buzzed with innovation and cooperation. Species that had been kept deliberately primitive for millennia were sharing technologies and ideas with civilizations that had hidden their true capabilities for centuries. It's hard to believe how quickly everything changed, Captain Ryan Foster observed as he joined Jake at the viewing port. The former Stealth Fleet commander now wore the insignia of Fleet Admiral, having been promoted to oversee the Coalition's rapidly expanding military forces. Jake nodded, remembering the chaos of those first weeks after the Council's collapse. The hardest part was convincing everyone that we weren't just replacing one form of tyranny with another. Some species expected us to behave like the Council, to demand tribute, and impose our will on weaker civilizations. Instead, we gave them something the galaxy hadn't seen in thousands of years, Ryan replied. We gave them a choice. The Coalition's founding principles were simple but revolutionary. Member species retained complete autonomy over their internal affairs. Technology sharing was voluntary and mutual. Military protection was provided without demanding political control. Most importantly, any species could leave the Coalition at any time without fear of retaliation. The results had exceeded everyone's expectations. The bat-like Chiroptera had shared their advanced bioengineering techniques, allowing human medical science to advance by centuries in mere months. The silicon-based miners provided access to exotic materials that made architect technology easier to manufacture. The Garden World's collective offered agricultural innovations that could feed entire star systems. Dr. Amy Rodriguez emerged from the research laboratories deep within Unity Station, her face bright with excitement. Jake, Ryan, you need to see what we've discovered. The cultural exchange programs are producing results we never imagined. She led them to a laboratory where human and alien scientists worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible under Council rule. The plant minds from the Garden Worlds have been sharing their biological computers with our quantum physicists. Together, they've developed processing systems that make the architect technology look primitive by comparison. In another section, the aquatic depth species worked with human engineers to create underwater cities that could support multiple species simultaneously. Nearby, the crystalline beings of the former Council worlds collaborated with human artists to produce sculptures that existed in 4 dimensions. This is what the Council feared most, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Not any single species becoming too powerful, but all of us working together to push the boundaries of what's possible. President Carter arrived via secure transport from Earth, having come to Unity Station for the first anniversary celebration of the Coalition's founding. Her hair had gained more gray streaks over the past year, but her eyes remained bright with determination and hope. "Madam President," Jake greeted her formally before breaking into a smile. "How are the latest membership applications looking?" 3. More species requested admission this week, Carter replied. "The Council of 12 has become the Coalition of 43 and we're still growing. The hegemony worlds finally voted to join us yesterday, which brings our total membership to over 60% of known galactic civilization." The irony was not lost on anyone present. The hegemony had been one of the Council's most militaristic members, yet they had adapted to Coalition membership with surprising ease. General Vaxthul, the same alien who had tried to exterminate humanity, now served as the Coalition's Minister of Defense, his strategic expertise invaluable in protecting member worlds from the remaining Council holdouts. "What about the old Council leadership?" Ryan asked. "Any word from the intelligence networks?" Carter's expression grew more serious. "Speaker Zeth Kara and the other surviving Council members have retreated to the forbidden sectors at the galaxy's edge. They're trying to rebuild their power base using the species that haven't joined the Coalition, but their influence continues to shrink. Most of their former subjects view them as war criminals now." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Director Sam Hughes at the Project Prometheus facility. His holographic image appeared with news that sent shockwaves through the room. "President Carter, we've received a transmission from beyond known space," Sam announced. "It's coming from architect survivors who have been in stasis for millions of years. They're awakening because they detected the use of their technology in our war with the Council. The implications were staggering. The architects were not extinct as everyone had believed. Some had survived the Council's genocide by hiding in the deepest reaches of space, waiting for someone to inherit their legacy and use it to challenge the galactic order." "What do they want?" Carter asked. "To meet with humanity's leaders," Sam replied. "They're impressed that we succeeded where they failed, that we used their technology not to dominate others, but to liberate them. They want to share more advanced knowledge with us, to help us build a truly free galactic civilization." The transmission included coordinates for a meeting point in neutral space, along with technical specifications for communication devices that would allow real-time conversation across galactic distances. The architects were offering to fully reveal themselves to the species that had vindicated their sacrifice. As the group discussed the implications of contact with the galaxy's most advanced surviving civilization, Jake found himself thinking about the children he had seen playing in Unity Station's parks. Human kids laughing alongside young Chiroptera, plant saplings from the garden worlds, and crystalline offspring from a dozen different species. These children would grow up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal, where species differences were celebrated rather than feared, where the pursuit of knowledge was encouraged rather than suppressed. They would inherit a universe of infinite possibilities that their parents could barely imagine. "You know what the best part is?" Jake said as he watched a group of youngsters chase each other through the station's corridors, their laughter echoing in multiple languages and frequencies. The Council thought they were eliminating a threat when they tried to blackmail humanity. Instead, they created the catalyst that freed the entire galaxy. President Carter smiled as she watched the children play. The Council's greatest mistake was assuming that humans would choose survival over principle. They never imagined we would choose to fight for something bigger than ourselves. Admiral Foster nodded toward the viewing port, where construction crews continued their work on the expanding station. Now, every species in the galaxy knows that freedom is worth fighting for, and that they don't have to fight alone. As the anniversary celebration continued around them, the leaders of humanity reflected on how far they had all come. The Council's attempt at blackmail had indeed triggered something unstoppable, but not the extinction they had planned. Instead, they had unleashed hope, cooperation, and the unstoppable human tendency to refuse to go quietly into the dark. Outside the station, ships from dozens of species moved freely through space that had once been controlled by ancient tyrants. The galaxy was healing, growing, and reaching toward a future that promised wonders beyond imagination. The age of the Council was over, The age of freedom had begun, and at its heart stood humanity, no longer the threatened species facing extinction, but the guardians of liberty who had shown the galaxy that even the most powerful oppressors could be defeated by those brave enough to stand together and fight for what was right.